Hey guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome to a swatch video. I am going to do comparisons of all the shadows in my collection with the BeautyBay Wilderness palette. This beauty has been a focus of my latest makeup testing, and I have to say I've been loving it. The sad thing is that it's been out of stock now for a little bit, and there's a bit of conflicting information online. Customer service of BeautyBay has been answering under comments either that they are bringing it back or that it was a limited edition and it will never come back. So we don't know, but I thought that to see if there's special shades that are interesting to you, or to see how this one compares to things in your collection, I could do that in my collection and then see what is similar and what is not, and maybe it helps you decide if you want to hold off on buying it because you have the colors, or if you really are going to look for it when it's back in stock. Hopefully. If it isn't, I am sorry, but I thought comparing this palette to other things in my collection would be a good way to have an idea of what the shades look like as well. So I am going to get started, and I hope you enjoy this video. If you do, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and yeah, let's get into it. Let's get this comparison part started. I have here a few palettes that I want to compare with the Wilderness palette right here, and let's see. Starting with the Mandalorian by Colourpop, I thought the mint green might have been similar, so let's take a look. But the mint green from the Child is much more cool tone, a little bit more blue and less saturated of a mint. So this one is the palette, this one is Colourpop, and that's about the only shade that is similar, I think. Everything else is different. Maybe this guy right here and this guy right here. And again, Colourpop and Wilderness. They could be similar, but Wilderness is much more warm toned, whereas the Child palette is much more green leaning. So that was this one, a quick one. Then at Forest Sight, I think actually has quite a few mattes that are comparable, and I have to use this palette more because it's gorgeous. Of this one, I think we have, maybe I'll do it on my arm instead. We have the yellow that is similar, maybe actually, maybe not. Chanterelle and Marigold. So we have Chanterelle, which is a bit more orange, whereas Marigold is a little bit more mustard. Then we have the greens. This is Fiddlehead, and then I can compare it with Leaf and Eucalyptus, but I think that Fiddlehead is exactly in the middle. So we have Leaf, Fiddlehead, and Eucalyptus, and you can see that Fiddlehead is much more muted and gray tone compared to the other two that are much brighter greens. My light is going in and out because of clouds, you guys, but I think you can see the comparisons regardless. Then let's take a look at Emerald City versus Ivy. And I think Ivy is a little bit darker, but they're quite similar. Emerald City is a touch lighter and more green, less blue. Yeah, with the sun coming out, you see the difference a little bit better, but they're very similar. You can see it also on my fingers, actually. This is Emerald City, is much more emerald green, and Ivy has a touch of teal in there, a touch of blue that makes it more teal. And finally the blue, which is Pacific Northwest, but this really is a teal, and maybe I could add the Twilight shade, but I don't think there's any overlap there. You can really see one is a teal, one is a blue, royal blue, I guess. And yeah, I don't think this warm tone brown has anything to do with these orangey tones right here. Amanita is much more plum compared to how red this shade right here, raw, is. So that is the comparison from the at for a side palette. I actually need to use this more. It just, look at this makes me happy. This is like my color tones. Then this is not the bronze palette, but this is my personal palette of Natasha Denona Midi. So this is made from the Metropolis and the bronze. I'll link a video where I made it here in the description box. But what I wanted to compare was this shade, which I think is Lethal or Trooper from the Metropolis, with the shade Leaf, because I had an inkling that they were quite similar. And I think they are. Well, I think the Natasha Denona one is a little bit more yellow toned, and it being a cream to powder, you need to build it up to get the really strong color. But yeah, I think they're actually quite similar. Not, yeah, the one from the palette is a bit more green. And that is, I think, the only one that I really wanted to compare in here, because the rest is just other tones. Yeah, the yellow might be similar, but this yellow is from, yeah, I think it's from, I think this yellow is from Metropolis as well. I have the shades names in the back, but I don't think it's relevant now. And then from the gold palette, I was thinking whether there is some similarity. You can see the mustard shades. This one is much more sandy, much more brown. And yeah, I don't see any similarity other than that. So that one can go as well. And now let's get into the Melt Cosmetics palettes. Starting with Rust, because she's on top. And I think here what could be similar is again the yellow and the one brown, but that's about it. So I'm not even gonna bother swatching these. From Gemini now, I repeat this every time. I have these two shades from Smoke Sessions in here because I think this color story works better for me, and the Melt palettes are magnetic. So, but here I think we have much more to compare. For example, the shade Lorelei from the Melt palette with Marigold. Lorelei is a little bit more orange than Marigold, and then we have the shade, yeah, I don't think Polka Dot has a lot to similar to Earth. No, as you can see, Polka Dot and then Earth is much more dark and saturated, and Cupcake, it's cooler. You can already see it in the pan. Then we can compare Leo with Eucalyptus. This is Leo and this is Eucalyptus. These are actually quite close, with Leo being a little bit less saturated, a little bit more gray. Then we have Fire OG right here, and I'll swatch Leaf again right here, and then Mochi right here. And you can see that they have nothing in common. I actually thought one of these would be closer to Leaf, but it isn't. So that's it. Then I wanted to swatch Goals, which is this green shimmer in the Gemini palette, versus Lime, which is the green shimmer in the Wilderness palette. And you can see that Lime is much more green, whereas Gemini is much, it's a bit darker and a bit more golden. Again, another color story that makes my heart happy. But there were not a lot of dupes, I would say. The closest, I would say, are Leo and Eucalyptus. Also, I do not have Vida and Muerte, which I thought were like these two color stories that were mixed together. I never got the Amor Eterno collection. I was hoping that I would get it on sale eventually, but not. From Melt, I also have the Radioactive Palette, but these are way brighter. I was thinking maybe some of these shades would be similar, but they're not. So I'll put this one away. And Smoke Sessions right here has a few that I think are similar. Again, these two are from the Gemini palette that I just put in here. So for example, the Deep Green Space Queen. Oh, I should have probably... We'll do it on my hand. Space Queen, we're right here, versus Ivy. And they're actually quite close, with Ivy being a little bit more green. and Space Queen being a little bit more muted and a bit more teal. Then I wanted to compare, yeah, Breeze right here, the beautiful metallic, with the shade Sweet Tooth right here. Sweet Tooth is more blue, but yeah, a little bit. They're quite similar as well. I wonder where BeautyBay got the inspiration. Probably the best of all, the Melt palettes, I guess. And then we have Moss, but I think this one is lighter than Mean Green. Yeah, it is. You can see them right here. Quite similar, aren't they? So it is. And those were my Melt Cosmetics palettes. As a conclusion, I think none of these palettes are exact dupes, but now you can see if any of the colors that you were interested in this palette are in any of the palettes you already own that we have in common. Before I continue to my singles, I also wanted to take a look at a few of my Glam Shop palettes, especially the green one. So, looking at the green palette, I thought I would have a lot of similar shades, but actually not really, because this one is much more gray and brown than Eucalyptus. Florina is much warmer and more green than Forest, which is a little bit more cool toned. And yeah, maybe Messick, but I can already tell you not. It's not a dupe for Moss right here. And the shade Blush Blue, I don't know how to pronounce it. There's a lot of consonants next to each other, which is very difficult for me to say, versus Ivy, and Ivy is more green right here. So there's no comparisons here either. I was thinking maybe the Burgundy palette has something similar to the red, and I think so. This Burakzovi looks quite similar to Raw. Let me swatch them next to each other. So we have Raw and this one in the Burgundy palette. They're similar. I think I can build Raw up a little bit more. Maybe Raw is a little bit lighter, but they're quite similar. And this is to say also that Raw is not a warm tone red. It really is a cooler tone dark red. It shows up quite yeah, berry actually on the skin, at least on my skin. And finally the Camo Palette, and this one here has a few more grungy greens, and I was thinking whether maybe the shade Caliber was at all similar to Eucalyptus, but I mean, not really. Caliber is lighter, has more gray and white in there compared to Eucalyptus, which is actually what I like about this palette, is that there is no half measure with the colors. It's color. There's no neutralizing it. There's no trying to make it less saturated with some gray, or whereas I find that these turn out quite neutral on my skin. But that was a bit the only shade that I thought was similar. Now, what I would like to go to is in my singles. Another chapter. Okay, let me start with what I have already been swatching. This is the shade Karma by Makeup Geek, an old duochrome, and I compared it with the shade Ray. Ray is much more glittery and sparkly, whereas Karma is a straight up metallic, but the shift from more like light yellow, I guess, to lime green is very similar. The third one is from Neve Cosmetics, but it has a much more mint green shift. And I actually didn't think about it, but it could be that, I don't know, this guy from the gold palette is just gold. And then there's one in a Pat McGrath palette that is similar. In the Bronze Seduction, we have a very glittery, very similar shade actually, but it's much more impactful. I mean, this is why you pay so much for this palette compared to this one, which you pay much less. So it's similar actually. It's similar to the one in Pat McGrath Bronze Seduction. I have not been looking for a comparison with Snow because this is just a bone color. You have it somewhere else in your collection. Let's go in with Sky. Sky is a sky blue, quite pigmented, and it works really well. I pulled out from Lethal Cosmetics the shade Remedy right here, but I think it's a bit, I don't know, it's actually really similar. It's a bit lighter maybe, but it's quite similar, as you can see. And also from Nabla the shade New Heaven, but this one is lighter, as you can see, so it's more pastel. Remedy is a really good dupe for that blue right here. Then I showed you Ray. Let's look at Twilight. This is a beautiful dark blue. It also works really well, which is surprising. And my other favorite dark blue is Colored Rain Yacht Life, which is part of their Vivid Pigments. It's a bit of a dustier, drier formula. And it's a little bit lighter, I would say. Yeah, you can see in camera that it's quite a bit lighter. And the other dark blue that I have is Blue Velvet by Nabla Cosmetics, but this one is much more muted, I think, yes. This one has a higher percentage of gray in there that makes it more Nabla, more wearable, let's say, but it's not a dupe. So for these, I don't really have an exact dupe. Actually, pulling out all these shades made me realize that either I'm missing a huge part of my singles collection, or I just don't have that many of these shades, which is great because this is the type of reasons I have to get a new palette, right? I had pulled out this Inglot shade, but I don't think it's really close to anything, so I'll put that aside. And then for the shimmer one, which is the shade called Ocean, it's really a sparkly, glittery type of eyeshadow. It's much more impactful in real life than you can see in the video. The only other thing that maybe is similar is Antimatter by Colourpop, but this one shifts purple, so, and it's a bit darker, but it has a similar sparkle in there. And then I have something that is instead just a metallic. This is Equilibrium by Lethal Cosmetics, and this is definitely not comparable, not something similar at all. And here is the blues in the palette. I started without you. I was starting with the Green Bro, and I compared Forest right here with Conjure Up by Colourpop, which is darker, as you can see, but the tone is very similar. And then the next one I'll swatch is Eden by Lethal Cosmetics, but this one is a little bit more muted and maybe less blue toned, mainly more muted. It has more gray in it, and yes, also a little bit less blue toned right here, but overall I think they're all quite similar. Maybe on the eyes, Forest is also lighter, and you can use it more as a transition shade, whereas the others, for me at least, they are deepening shades. Then we have the shade Breeze, which I showed you is very similar to the shade in Smoke Session. I don't have anything like it, I think, in my collection in terms of singles, and that's okay. It's a bright minty green. It's very pretty. I'll swatch it with the one from Melt again, just because it gives me joy. Here we are. Next up we have Mint, and this is a light mint green. Again, I think I had more of these shades in the past. Right now I only have Envy from Divina Cosmetics, and Envy is a little bit deeper and more blue, so not really dupe there, but again, we're not looking for dupes. I'm trying to show you comparisons. The next shade here is Moss, which is a nice green, and I wanted to compare it with a few of my Glam Shop shades. This is from the Remix palette, but it is more of a black base with green shimmer on top. Quite different, actually. And the other one is Zwierkowka, also from Glam Shop, and that is a regular shimmer though. This is not great. Not my favorite. Actually, would be a good time to declutter it. So I also don't have anything similar to this one. Can you imagine that? And the final shade in this row is Ivy, which we've seen is a beautiful deep green, similar to Space Queen in the other palette. And for this one, to be honest, the only comparison I have is Colored Rain Squad, which is much more teal, I believe. Oh, did it go hard pan? We are going to use a brush then. Here we go. It's a little bit more blue, but quite similar. And I forgot that I actually have my Makeup Geek green here, which is the shade Enchanted Forest. And this used to be, is actually to the date, my deepest green. But you can see that it's more gray, whereas this is a true dark green. I love this. You can really see the difference in undertones. I love this. It's making me even happier to have the palette, actually, and hoping that BeautyBay will bring it back. If we make enough noise, maybe they will. Then next up we get to swatch the green row. I'm not going to swatch the last one, Fossil, because you saw it earlier, and I don't think there's a lot of like uniquenesses in it. But we're going to start with a Lime, which is a beautiful shade of sparkly, shiny, warm green. This one, as I said, looks quite similar to the one in the Gemini palette. I have Bucks here from Glam Shop, which is one of my favorites in this category, but it's less limey green, a little bit more golden. I would call it more wearable. Less green, but a bit more golden. And then I have the shade Cryptic from Lethal Cosmetics, which is newer to my collection, which has a little bit of a cooler base in general, and not a lot of sparkle. So overall, Lime is still, I find, the prettiest here. And then something I mentioned in a previous vid, Get Ready With Me, what I was super interested in was finding dupes for Leaf. We saw that there aren't really, except for the shade in the Metropolis palette by Natasha Denona, there aren't really dupes in my palette collection. In my singles also, not really. This is Recluse from Lethal Cosmetics, but it's much lighter and browner. It looks quite green in the pan, but it's a very neutral shade, I find. And then the other shade I have is Colored Rain Congo Basin, which is from the Safari palette. And this is a beautiful murky green, but again, yeah, my apologies for staining. I went through the dark shades before I went to the lighter ones. Again, much more brown and less green than Leaf. So love the shade Leaf. Really unique in my collection. I really, really like it. Then we have the shade Eucalyptus, and honestly, I have some greens in my collection, but they're all much, much more brown than this. Or gray, I don't know, let me show you. I went quickly through these and I don't think anything in here could be comparable. Also from my Makeup Geek shadows, the green in here isn't really, I'll actually compare it. But it isn't really comparable because it's much more green, less olivey toned and a bit more gray as well. So that's not a dupe. Or like similar either. And an old one from Makeup Geek is Dirty Martini, also not a dupe either. And Radical from Nabla is quite a dark, more browny toned green, so that's not a dupe either. And one more for this, just to compare, is Habitat from Lethal Cosmetics. It's another green that I have, and this is lighter and more warm toned than Eucalyptus. You can see it here, or warm tone, more green and lighter, so that's not a similar shade either. The final one is Marigold. I'm just gonna do it on my hand, and this is a mustardy yellow. From Lethal Cosmetics I have the shade Esteem that could be similar, but it's more orange and lighter than Marigold. Then I have Desert Sands by Makeup Geek right here, which is also more orange. Oh, my hand is really smooth from all the cleaning off the swatches, so nothing really is sticking to it. But you can see that Desert Sands is also much more brown. Then I have the Old Chickadee by Makeup Geek right here, which is much more orange, as you can see. I don't really have anything like that, like this shade right here. Not really, not really. Okay, my whole arm has now a tint of green and blue, but we're gonna continue and finish the last row. We have the reds, and the first one is Poppy, which, I mean, can you see how bright this is and pigmented? And it works so well. Reds that I have are Love Plus by Colourpop, which one of the best reds out there. It's a bit even less vibrant actually than Poppy. And then I have Sauce by Color Drain, which is also one of my favorites, which is more warm, I think. A smidgen warmer. Oh, the sun is out. A smidgen warmer than the one in the Wilderness palette. But yeah, I think if you have a red, it's a red. It's a bright red. It's okay. Not extremely unique, as you can see. Oh, and I had also taken out another one, which is Oh Ship by Colourpop, but I think this is too light and too orange if you also just look at it in the pan. Next one up is Raw, which, as I said, is this darker, more berry toned red. And I have Hot Tamale by Makeup Geek to compare it with, even though I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't think it looks similar at all. Hot Tamale is lighter. Then I have Fahrenheit by Nabla, which I know does not swatch very well. Oh, actually not too bad. But it's a more desaturated, more gray. Actually, the base, like the tone, no, the hue maybe is similar. I'm trying to get the right word here. But it has a little bit more gray in there. And then I also have my favorite dark red, which is the Inglot number 301, but this is a warm dark red, so that's why it's also my favorite, but it's too warm compared to Raw. So these are the dark reds, and then we have the shimmery red, which is called Heat, which is a gorgeous metallic, quite silicone-y feeling red with gold shimmer. Now I have something like Divina Blazed, which is just a metallic red, and you can see that it's different. This is a red base with a ton of like sparkle on it. It's not glitter, it's sparkle, and it reminded me a bit of the Shadows by Glam Shop. This is Techno Peach from their Velvet, and it's actually quite similar, if not maybe the base is a tiny bit more pink, and there's more glitter in this one for sure, and the base is lighter, and there's more, not glitter but sparkle in this one. And then finally, yeah, this is a marble. This is called Fashion for Success, and it has again a red base with a lot of flecks of color, which is also quite similar but less pink than the other one, and maybe the closest to the one in the palette. So these were the reds, and finally I'll do the orange. The brown, it's a brown. Not much to say or write home about, as we would say. Again, on my hand, it doesn't swatch the best, but just for the colors, this is Sunrise. I'll compare it to Sugar Pill Flame Point, because, oh, this one's also almost hard band. Plus, as I said, my hand doesn't really... Should have put some primer on probably. I think the Sugar Pill one is brighter. It's brighter and lighter, it seems. And then I have the shade Cannonball by Colourpop, which, to be honest, looks a little bit more red and less orange than the one in the palette. There we go. The comparisons. So Sunrise is a bit of a darker orange, whereas the one for Sugar Pill is lighter, and the one from Colourpop is a bit more red. So here we go. Comparisons of the palette with all my singles and my other palettes. I hope you enjoyed this video and that it's not 1,000 years old. Let me know in the comments down below if you managed to get the palette, or if you're hoping that they will restock it. I really, really hope they will restock it, because it's gorgeous and it works really well. You can go check out my 2 Get Ready With Me's that I did with this palette, and you can see how the shadows perform on the eyes. I used all of them, and I think it's a great quality palette. I'm very happy of the, what is it, 18, 16 euros that I spent on it. For the price, it's really, really unbeatable. But also in general, even if it was 50 euros, I would be happy with the quality of these, and I would be happy to have bought it. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new here, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye guys.